we will really be focusing on a separate topic than what we had last time. But allow me to first review with you some key points of the last webinar, especially that I see there are participants who haven't attended the webinar last time, no? So, meron tayong tatlo na hindi nakapag-attend ng webinar last time. Alright, so let me just do a quick review as scheduled in today's webinar. Last December 12, we had our first webinar in the series, and that webinar is titled Ensuring Student Success Through Assessment, What Every Teacher Needs to Understand. Alright, so in that first webinar, the goal was really for us to arrive at a shared understanding of the most basic concepts related to student assessment. It is important that we arrive at a shared vocabulary and associate the same meaning to a word that we use throughout the series. So in order to achieve that particular goal, we took up topics like we really focused on the assessment strategies, and we did not push through with the second part, no, as many were already leaving the webinar rooms at the time. I hope to include topics like ongoing assessment and assessment plan in today's webinar, because these are also important components of 21st century assessments. Alright, so first we dealt with the assessment strategies, and of course we know that that to ensure that students become successful through assessment requires that teachers really are proficient in using a range of assessment techniques in the classroom. And as you know, it is important that teachers require an understanding of what makes up an effective assessment strategy. And of course, we know that in order to be effective, an assessment strategy must have targeted purpose, conducted in a variety of methods using appropriate instruments. And we can now look at the first of these components, the purpose of assessment. Alright, so the purpose refers to the reason or the goal for doing the assessment, and it answers the question, why assess? Of course, you agree with me that in most classrooms in the Philippines and in some parts of the world, assessment really serves just one purpose, and that is students demonstrating their understanding of the content at the end of a lesson, at the end of a unit, or at the end of a project activity. However, we also know that some classrooms put premium on empowering students to succeed, and in these classrooms, assessment serves a greater variety of purposes that also lead to better instruction and improved learning. Well, the key to effective assessment is really to have a clear purpose for each assessment activity, and to keep that purpose in mind, and to make sure that all purposes are addressed also during a learning unit. So, looking at the different purposes for assessment, we have 5 main categories of purpose of assessment. The first one is gauging student needs, encouraging self-direction and collaboration, monitoring progress, checking for understanding, and encouraging metacognition, as well as demonstrating knowledge and skills. And when gauging students' needs, really determining their students' prior knowledge, attitudes, and interests about any topic at the beginning, would help teachers design instruction and interact with students in ways that build not only content knowledge but also many 21st century skills. When we encourage self-direction and collaboration, the frequent assessment of students' 21st century skills, for example, will help them become strategic learners. And of course, by assessing their self-direction and collaboration skills as well, students learn to set goals and modify their behaviors. It's important that these skills, self-direction and collaboration, are also monitored or encouraged during the entire assessment cycle. Monitoring progress is important, and when teachers continuously monitor student progress, they can address misconceptions right away and also other problems in a timely manner. When students also self-assess and receive frequent feedback on their progress, they take more control over their learning and address specific areas of weakness and affirm specific areas of strength. So it's again important as a purpose for doing assessment, monitoring progress of students in learning as well as in the development of specific skills. Checking for understanding and encouraging metacognition are also two important aspects of assessing student skills. For instance, in a unit or a project, students need numerous opportunities to practice reflection, metacognition, and think about their own strategies for completing certain tasks. Of course, teachers can use this information to plan, for example, instruction in relevant process skills, habits of mind, or 21st century skills. And finally, assessment can take the purpose of allowing students to demonstrate knowledge and skill. And this is usually done at the end of a project or a unit where teachers require students to show what concepts and skills they have learned through products or performances. All right? Again, the information from these assessments become input to the long-term plans of future learning. All right, so the next item we took up last time is about assessment methods. The assessment methods refer to the process or the ways of doing assessment, and it answers the question, how do we assess? And you have there listed some examples of the more common assessment methods, like discussions, use of graphic organizers, journal entries, self-assessment, peer assessment, teacher observation, student-teacher conferences, which are either led or called by the teacher or initiated by the student. And then you also have products and performances as your assessment method, and portfolios. These are very important, and I'm sure you have had some kind of experience using some of these assessment methods yourselves. All right, so once you have set the purpose for your assessment and decided on a method, the next thing that you do is to develop instruments or adapt them if they are existing, and use these as tools to collect information as well as record data about student learning and prompt them to think and behave in specific ways. And these three that you see in our list are examples of the most popular assessment instruments. Checklists, rubrics becoming very popular for the past 6 years or so. And then journal prompts. These are important. The questions that you ask when you want students to write up something about their experiences. All right. And of course, what is nice is that when you put together assessment purpose, the methods you have chosen, as well as the assessment instruments that you have developed, you really put together an assessment strategy. And it is important that teachers, in order to ensure student success through assessment, should be able to understand why specific or various assessment strategies are used, when to use these strategies depending on the purpose, uh, and how these strategies can be structured, how they will be sequenced, who will do the assessment, is it the teacher or the students, and are students going to do or produce certain products or complete certain performances and so on. And finally, more important is that we do assessment not only for the sake of collecting data about student learning, but the more important thing is that we use this assessment data. And so the next question that we ask is what to do with the results. All right, so that's what we took up in the first webinar. We had a lot of checks for understanding activities. We also did a lot of polls where the participants participated in sharing their own experiences and practice in doing assessments in relation to the purpose, in relation to the methods that they use, and also the instruments that go with their assessment strategy. And all right, so for this second part of our series, the focus is on assessment in 21st century classrooms. And initially, we were thinking of doing this specifically for science, but then we realized that since our members also include math teachers, and some of these teachers are also participating in our webinars in their schools and get to invite other teachers or teachers teaching other subjects, not just science or math. I thought of providing a general perspective into this topic of assessing 21st century learning, covering not just content but also skills, and then what adjustments we need to do to be able to accomplish that particular task. All right, so at this point, let me just load that material, that presentation, so that we can start formally our second webinar. Meanwhile, may I just remind our participants that they can make use of the main chat to type in some comments or perhaps raise some issues or questions related to what is being presented. All right? Okay, so while I'm doing the other presentation, I'd just like to look at some of the answers that we have here in the poll. Which of the topics below are you most interested in? And participants, two of our four participants say that they would like to know how to assess thinking skills as well as processes. And these are very relevant not only for science but also for math teaching. All right, and also how to develop assessment items and tasks. This is very crucial because I remember during the last webinar, the first webinar we had, people were asking, how do we distinguish or how can we tell whether a question or an item or a task measures or assesses understanding or assesses processes and stuff like that. No, so it's really important that we do that. And in fact, I think it's in the fourth of our series that we dedicate to learning how to develop assessment tasks and assessment items in relation to DepEd's K-pop assessment framework. Okay, so let me put that up now. Just a minute. Okay, so shortly you will be seeing the PowerPoint presentation on their screens. This time, being the second of our webinar series on K-12 assessment, the goal of today's session is for us to arrive also at a shared understanding of the assessments that support students' mastery of knowledge, skills, and expertise needed in 21st century schools, workplace, and life. In order to do that, we will first review together some popular assessment practices and see how these can be transformed into 21st century assessments. In particular, I zoom in on three most salient features of 21st century assessment, and these include number one, the incorporation and assessment of 21st century skills into student outcomes, and the second one is the focus on the shift towards more ongoing formative assessment. And then finally, a focus on, again, increasing student responsibility and participation in assessment. And so today, as you can see on the screen, the shift in focus on the topic is on the 21st century classroom. Today's webinar is titled Assessment in a 21st Century Classroom. All right, so let me retrieve our previous chat pod so that we will be able to see our earlier notes over there. So let me just put that up again. Okay. All right, so there you go. Okay, so again, our main interaction pod is the main chat, no? So feel free to type in comments and questions on that pod. All right, so again, everyone, I'd like to welcome Ma'am Jean, Sir Ricky, Ma'am Carol to our webinar number 2, Assessment in a 21st Century Classroom. And today again, like last time, I will be your resource person. And joining me will be our other hosts listed there in our attendee list. We have John Ray Rosso, also Michael Mantala, and Mona Sasing. Okay, so let's look at this K-12 science framework. I'm sure Ma'am Jean here and maybe Ma'am Carol are familiar with this. I don't remember, Ricky, what subject are you teaching? Are you teaching math? Yeah, Ma'am Carol, I remember, is a science teacher. Also, Ma'am Jean. Okay, so let's look at this K-12 science education framework. Oh yeah, Christine, you're there. I'm sorry, I didn't notice you. Welcome again. All right, so we have more science people. Oh, all of you are science. Okay, so let's look at this K-12 conceptual framework for science education. I'm sure you're already familiar with this, and it says that science education aims to develop a scientific scientific literacy among learners in order to prepare them to be informed and participative citizens who are also able to make judgments and decisions regarding applications of scientific knowledge that may have social, health, or environmental impact. If you notice, the curriculum is designed around the 3 domains of learning science. Let me get my pointer there. All right. These 3 wedges of the pie here represent the 3 domains of learning science. You have their understanding and applying scientific knowledge in a local setting as well as global context, performing scientific processes, and also developing and demonstrating scientific attitudes and values. All right, so these are the 3 domains of learning science. It also says that the acquisition of these domains is facilitated using the different approaches like multi or interdisciplinary approach, science, technology society approach, contextual learning, problem or issue-based learning, inquiry-based approach. And again, these approaches are based on sound educational pedagogy, namely constructivism, social cognition learning model, learning style theory, and brain-based learning. Again, science content and science processes are intertwined in the K-12 curriculum. Again, it is important to note that the K-12 science curriculum is learner-centered and inquiry-based, and emphasizing the use of evidence in constructing explanations. All right, so let me show you, let me just point to you these 2 aspects here or elements of this framework: assessment and monitoring. All right, and let us look at some classroom scenarios and see a more concrete characterization of this framework. All right. So let's all together look at this slide here. As you read this scenario, I'd like you to note the topic or the content as well as the specific concepts that are covered. The learning activities, what learning activities are students engaged in, and also please note the processes or skills required. Are they creating any artifacts or products? Are they completing any performances? Do they interact with persons either inside or outside their classrooms? Are they using any tools, manipulating them or operating them? All right, so let's take a look at this scenario. In a science class, students take on the roles of botanists, exploring the question, how does the world change during the school year? In small groups, they adopt an outside area of the school, make ongoing observations, and collect data on tree changes throughout the year, comparing data with students in another country using a wiki. Each group presents their findings to a tree conservation foundation. All right, so let's just quickly answer this brief question. What process or skills are required as students perform certain activities, these activities? But first, let's look at examples of what types of activities are the students doing. Can you just type on the chat pad, please? In this scenario, please name the learning activities that students engage in. Making observations, Okay, thank you, Carol. And these are ongoing observations, no? Throughout the year. Right? Observing, yeah, making observations. What else? What else are students doing? They collect data, right? They also compare the data that they have collected. Uh, as a group, they also present their findings. And probably they collaborate with other students in another country. All right, so one next question. Do they use any tools? Other tools listed here in this scenario? Are students using or operating or manipulating any tools? Yes, a wiki. They're using an online tool. Alright, so mainly that, no? And of course, probably their journals or their notebooks for listing down the data, their observation data. Alright, so let's look at again another scenario also in a science class. In a science project, students learn about renewable sources of energy such as the sun. They explore questions related to how people solve problems and why solar energy should be considered as an energy source. Then, they create solar cookers. As they design solar cookers, they confront many problems that must be overcome. Same question. What processes or skills are required as students complete these tasks? Alright, do you see any particular processes or skills that are required? Yes, problem solving, yes. They confront the problems that they meet as they design their solar cookers. Probably, yes, creating, no? And maybe making designs or planning would be also some of the skills or the processes that are needed here. All right, so while we're not science teachers, let's still look at this conceptual framework for K-12 math in the Philippines. Alright? So, look at this. Iba naman ang itsura nito, no? Parang lantern ito. Yeah, beautifully presented. And I'd like you to zoom in at the center of what's at the center of the star. The math framework says that the twin goals of mathematics in the basic education levels, which are covering kindergarten to grade 10, are critical thinking and problem solving. So, ito yung pinaka-goal ng math education. These two goals are to be achieved with an organized and rigorous curriculum content, a well-defined set of high-level skills and processes. You should be able to see those. Sana. Where's my pointer? Content, skills and processes, desirable values and attitudes right here. Appropriate tools, using appropriate tools, taking into account the different contexts. Alright, so yun yung kanilang explanation, no? And if you look at the content, there are defined five content areas in the curriculum: numbers and number sense, measurement, geometry, patterns and algebra, and probability and statistics. Alright? And the specific processes that and skills to be developed are knowing and understanding, estimating, computing and solving, visualizing and modeling, representing and communicating, conjecturing, reasoning, proving and decision making, and applying and connecting. So ganito, no? Complex yung kanilang conceptual framework for mathematics. Alright, so both frameworks that I've shown you are the December 2013 versions of the DepEd Curriculum Guide, both for science and mathematics. Alright, so let's remember those. The goals, the different ways those are achieved, the coverage of each of the 5 components, and the support systems in the pedagogy that are involved in making sure that these goals are met. No? So you can see that there's constructivism, there's reflective learning, and the like. All right, so now let's look at some classroom scenarios again. And also again, as we read through the scenario, let's note the topic or the content or the specific concepts that are covered, the learning activities that students engage in, and note the processes or skills that are required, whatever artifacts they create, performances that they complete in this task, and the persons they interact with, as well as the tools that they use or manipulate. All right? Students gather data about playground equipment to design a safe and enjoyable playground. When collecting data, they take digital pictures of playground equipment, upload the pictures to a photo sharing website, and compare the various types of playground structures. They conduct online surveys using the photos to get public feedback on playground equipment. All right, so okay, so can you read this classroom scenario, the first one in mathematics? Okay, so let me ask, what are students doing in this particular class scenario? Give me at least 2. Okay, what are students doing in this math class? They are gathering data. Yes. They will take pictures. What else do they do? Their goal is to design a safe playground. Yes. They are uploading pictures. They also conduct online surveys. Yes. And so you see that the learning activities are varied, no? So medyo komplikado, no? Marami, iba't iba. And it's not just, while this may be focused on specific mathematics concept or topic, you see that the application is really one that resembles what professionals or real-world persons do or use their mathematics and know-how for. All right, so let's again look at the second scenario. In a math class, students develop real-world financial skills as they calculate real costs of designing a home. They brainstorm and prioritize desirable features of their homes and determine the cost of materials to manufacture those homes. They then design each of their dream homes using software. All right, so let's again look at what students are doing. They calculate costs. Okay, they brainstorm and prioritize features of their homes. They calculate, yes. What else do they do? They design the room, each of them in their dream house. All right, so I'd like you to remember these classroom scenarios that we have seen. Um, are these familiar to you? Can you identify? Are any of these scenarios happening in your own classrooms? Do students engage in these types of activities? All right, that's for you to reflect on again, no? As we continue. And let's look at the third framework I'd like to share with you this afternoon. This is what we call the framework for 21st century learning. And this was created by the group called the Partnership for 21st Century Skills. And you see there their website as well as the place where you can get a copy of this image yourself, no? And if you look at this framework, it really shows a view of 21st century teaching and learning that combines a discrete focus on 21st century student outcomes. The outcomes, these student outcomes are the arches in the rainbow. Itong core subjects, the 3 R's and 21st century themes. The life and career skills, you also have the learning and innovation skills, or the 4 C's, as well as the information, media, and technology skills. And supporting these student outcomes are the 4 pools called standards and assessment, curriculum and instruction, professional development, as well as learning environments. No? These are what they call the support systems. And these are the pools here at the bottom of the arch. All right. So again, notice that the key elements of 21st century learning are represented in these graphics and descriptions. No, this plus the math curriculum framework and the science curriculum framework, and they show a lot of complexities in terms of what is expected as outcomes for students and what the education system is supposed to be helping students accomplish. And these are important things. All right, so let's now ask ourselves, no? In all these frameworks, the 21st century education frameworks, like the 3 we saw earlier, the student outcomes are actually defined now as a blend of content knowledge, specific skills, expertise, even literacies, attitudes, and values. So, hindi lang, no, yung content knowledge in the different subject areas, kundi kasama na yung mga skills, expertise, attitudes, and values. And you recall that both from the science also, the K-12 science curriculum framework and the math curriculum framework that we've seen earlier. Now, the big question really is, what is the role of assessment in all of this? What perspectives on assessment support these 21st century education frameworks? Can our conventional, test-specific, and also assessment or evaluation at the end fully support these curriculum frameworks? So these are very important questions. Um, by student outcomes, we actually mean here that the skills, the knowledge, and expertise that students need to master in order to succeed in the 21st century school, work, or life, no? The idea is that now education needs to incorporate and assess the development of 21st century skills such as communication, critical thinking, problem solving, and self-direction. Right, so let's take a look at what we do in order to assess in our own classrooms. No? So let me put that poll here so you can answer. Let me put that right here at the middle. Okay, so let's share our own assessment practices. Okay, how do you assess your students? So any ideas now from or practices that you're doing in class? It could be a sharing about the method, the purpose, the instruments that you use. How do you assess your students? Driving, the type of learning, you mean matching. You do assessment depending on what type of learner you have. All right. So there's another one. Observation. Yes, making teacher observations. What else? You can type in the space provided. There's a box there. And can you see the answers that your co-participants have typed? Pen and paper test, yes. Okay. Right, so performance tasks, you're using performance tasks, yes, performance assessments. You also use exit slip and muddiest point. Well, I hope that one day we'll be able to learn a little bit more about this. These probably are instruments that you're using, or methods. What else? Christine shares oral evaluations, recitations, yes, or discussions, no? All right, so I'm sure meron pa kayong mga iba pang ginagamit, no? And you'll be able to remember them as we proceed in this presentation. All right. So let me hide that for now. All right. So these are examples of the more popular assessment practices. It is important that when we plan for assessment in 21st century education, we review what assessment we currently engage in, what are our practices, what assessment processes are involved. And these are some of the more common ones depicted by the list here. All right, so one, assessment is done by the teacher. Assessment focuses on what students learn in a subject area. For example, mathematics grade 7 or Science Unit 1, Grade 9, and the like. Assessment is done using tests and quizzes. Yes, kanina, no? There was one answer that matches this. Assessment is done outside of teaching and learning activities. So, iba pa, magtuturo muna, tapos saka magbibigay ng assessment sa dulo, no? So, tapos muna lahat ng pagtuturo. Instruction or learning activities proceed prior to the assessment. And assessment takes place at the end of a learning activity, and the purpose is to grade or score students. Alright? We have two additional sharings here, lab experiments, alright, and peer assessments. Okay, so let's look at, I want to give you some few minutes, a couple or so, to look at these assessment practices that are shown here on our screens, no? And can you identify which of these you're doing in your own classrooms? Which of these? You can just type the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then my other question is, which one is your favorite? So Ricky is using assessments at the end of the learning activity in order to give students a grade. So it's evaluating, you know. Carol does everything except number 4. And I'd like to know later on why number 4 is exempted from her practices. Assessment is done outside of teaching and learning activities. Okay, it's a bad practice. No, hindi naman siguro. You can, in our next slides, I will be showing you how you may be able to shift these practices, update this, or evolve them so that they become more attuned to being able to provide your students the kind of support that they need in order to accomplish or achieve the goals of 21st century education. Outside means assessment is done outside of teaching and learning activities. It's quite similar to number 4, but it's generally you do assessment that is not included in what students are doing or in your teaching. So it's a separate thing. It's totally has nothing to do with what students are doing in the classroom. The activities that they do have no assessment connection or basis outside of teaching. So you teach, and then in your teaching there's nothing about assessment there. When students complete learning activities, those activities are really just focused on, for instance, conceptual understanding, but no conscious intention to include assessment in what they're doing. All right, so Christine is actually sharing some kind of shift, no, in the first practice of assessment being done only by the teacher. All right, so let's, with that starting a point from Christine, let's look at this next question here. What assessment shifts do you think are needed? No, dun sa previous list, on this previous list, what changes do you see would improve the assessment practices so that the students will be better supported in maximizing their outcomes. All right, so can we put that again as a poll here? Let me just partly cover that. What shifts in these assessment practices do you think are in place? What shifts are needed? Okay, let me put that up there. What changes? No, we mean here by shifts is changes. What changes do we need to make to these current assessment practices to make them more 21st century relevant? Okay, so there's this answer, students. Okay, does that mean that students should also do assessment? And then there's another one that says assessment should not be done for grading purposes only. It should be also for learning. Yes, instructional, formative assessment, not only summative assessment. No? All right, so Christine here has shared her belief about the role of teachers in assessment, and she says that teachers are the sole assessor of learning. All right, let's look at that later on. I'll review that later. All right, thanks for your answers. And now let me proceed to our next slide. This slide shows some evolving assessment practices that you can incorporate into what we previously saw as the more conventional assessment practices. All right, so you should see the text in yellow. These are the enhancements, no, or these are the shifts, the changes that we've added to the assessment practices shown earlier. Assessment is done both by teacher and students. Okay, the students who assess themselves and also their peers. Assessment by teacher and students who assess themselves and their peers using a variety of methods and instruments to again foster engagement and self-awareness of their own learning. Assessment of knowledge and skills, no? Hindi lang knowledge, but also skills, because as you see, the frameworks show that skills, attitudes, values are also important components of student outcomes. Assessment is done using quizzes and tests and other methods such as student-teacher conferences, observation notes, reflections, and even journals, as well as instruments like rubrics and checklists. So, hindi lang test at quiz, no? Ang assessment methods natin. Assessment outside of and embedded in learning activities. What does that mean? Assessment takes place outside of teaching and learning activities. These are the ones that you do before, probably for diagnostic purposes or gauging student needs and prior interests and knowledge. But it is also done or embedded in daily instructions for the purpose of gauging student needs, encouraging self-direction and collaboration, even monitoring their progress and checking understanding, and finally in demonstrating understanding. So you can also conduct assessments and embed them in learning activities, not just outside or separate from learning activities and instruction. Assessment takes place also at the end of a learning activity for the purpose of grading, and before as well as during learning, to provide feedback to students so that they can improve their work and deepen their understanding. So hindi lang lagi sa dulo, no, ang assessment. Alright, so let me look at some of the things you've written up here in the chat. Alright, using active assessments. Assessments before learning activity or pre-test, I sometimes skip this to save time kasi alam ko na naman din ang result ng mga students ko. Nothing. Well, maybe that's what you think, but maybe if you really try doing that, you might be able to know what nothing means, no? Ano yung nothing ng isa, ang hindi nila alam, ay nagkakaiba din, no? At saka, meron ding level yan. Merong talagang konting-konti ang alam, pero meron ding may konting alam na mali. Una kulang, no? So, I think there's still value in doing pre-assessment. Do these pre-tests help them in a way or just for teachers' use only? Well, that's a very good question, Carol. The pre-tests or the assessments that you do prior to starting a topic or a unit are actually helpful to both students and teachers. To the teacher, so she would know how to deal with the class, where to start based on what the starting points of the students are, what their prior interests are in relation to the topic, what probably their questions are in relation to the topic, how much experience or background they already have, will really be very helpful in deciding, for example, on a selection of learning activities. If students have very little background, you may have to choose activities that provide them more basic introductions, for instance. Or the assessment done prior to the lesson will also be helpful to the students themselves because, for instance, when you use methods like the KWL chart, students there list up what they know and what they want to know, what their goals are, and then use that same material as a guide to see whether they progress as the lesson continues. So, ibig sabihin, they can use the results of their pre-assessment or pre-lesson assessment as a goal-setting strategy. So, helpful yun sa mga bata, no? At helpful din sa mga teachers. Yeah, oral assessment is okay, you know? It's really important. You gauge student prior knowledge, or interest in the topic through discussions, asking them questions or making them express themselves, no, orally, not necessarily in writing. But it's a lot easier later on for you to really track their progress if they have some written material that can tell you where they're starting from, and you can later compare that to where they've finally gone in terms of progress in understanding. Yeah, well, the multiple choice, the students really, di ba, ganyan talaga ang multiple choice, no? May guessing, no? Mataas ang guessing factor sa multiple choice. That's why it's probably not a good idea, no? Yung pre-testing by multiple choice, you probably will have to use other methods than tests. Again, pag-iisipan, no? Remember, tests are not the only assessment method that's available to you. There are other things depending on what the purpose that you really want to have, no? Yes, agree, no? So, as I've also mentioned earlier, you can check out the result of the pre-tests if it's really a test and see where students are at the moment insofar as the learning goal is concerned. Saan sila, no? Anong level nila? But again, since it is a pre-test, it should be well crafted para malaman mo talaga kung ano yung nasan na talaga sila. No? It cannot just be anything, any question, and the choices cannot just be any choices. No? Kundi the choice should be representing certain levels of student conceptions about the topic. So, pag pinili nila A, ang ibig sabihin yan, hindi pala nila na-experience yan. Pag pinili nila yung B, may misconception sila dyan sa topic na yan. Pag pinili nila yung C, partial ang kanilang conception, no? Hindi pa formed ang kanilang idea about the concept or the topic. So you have to make sure that if you're using a pre-test and using the multiple choice as your format, bear in mind, no? Yung mga importanteng kailangan nating tignan when we create tests using the multiple choice formats. All right, so again, it's just important that here it is possible to improve your assessment practices by, number one, increasing student participation. Number two, by moving towards more ongoing and embedded assessment strategies, as well as using a combination of methods in your assessment. Excuse me. All right. Let's look at one of the first, probably first key point about 21st century assessment, no? Incorporating and assessing 21st century skills. Notice that skills, processes, and skills, also values and attitudes are incorporated as student outcomes in the three curriculum frameworks that we've seen earlier, no? For the Philippines and also the Partnership for 21st Century Learning. It's important that you also incorporate as a target or as an objective or as a standard certain 21st century skills like collaboration, like creativity, like problem solving, like critical thinking, like self-direction, and the like. No? So what does this entail? This means that you need to look at your content standards, the topics that are listed, and then see where some of this, or one, at least one of these 21st century skills can also be incorporated as you are teaching that particular concept or topic. Again, dati, wala na, no? Automatic na lang, parang, matututo na rin yan silang mag-solve ng problem pagka binigyan ko ng maraming exercises, for instance, sa mathematics, no? Or students should be able to engage in decision-making once you provide them some opportunities for making choices, for example. Hindi siya targeted, no? Naging parang sabay na lang na matututunan, pero pwedeng hindi matutunan ng lahat kasi hindi rin tinarget. No? What this slide tells us is that in addition to targeting content standards or concepts, we also can, in fact, it is strongly encouraged that we also incorporate 21st century skills alongside or in the context of those discipline subject area concepts or topics. Right? So, it's just important, no? At itong slide na ito, simple lang ito. Ang sinasabi lang nito na when we think of assessment in a 21st century classroom, we just don't assess concepts. We just don't assess knowledge that are specific to the subject area. We can or we must also incorporate the assessment or target and assess the development of 21st century skills, such as these ones that are listed, no? All right? And the second salient feature, again, of a 21st century assessment is ongoing and or embedded assessment, no? Hindi siya yung hinihintay muna matapos yung klase, matapos yung activity, or matapos yung unit, or matapos yung linggo, tapos dun sa dulo na lang mag-a-assess. No, palaging ganon. I think lahat tayo ganyan ang practice, no? What is the meaning of ongoing assessment? Right? So the important thing here is in ongoing assessment, it doesn't mean that you abandon traditional classroom assessment practices. But what you do is you integrate a variety of assessment strategies throughout the entire instructional cycle. So mula umpisa, no? Sa start of the lesson, even prior to starting the lesson, if you do gauging student needs, for example, or assessing students' prior knowledge. And then at certain points during the unit, or if you're doing projects with your students, several at different stages during the projects, you can incorporate or integrate some assessment strategies. The idea here is that the strategies can be embedded and can contribute to learning and instruction at the same time. I'm sure you're doing a lot of this, no, in terms of the discussions. You also do use some graphic organizers, no, as a way not just to ask students what they know at the beginning, but you can also ask them to complete concept maps, for example, at different stages in the class, and that becomes an activity in itself. So it's included, it's embedded, and it is also part of the whole activity that they engage in. So the idea here is that there should be a balance of assessments, including standardized testing and also classroom formative and summative assessments, no? So hindi kailangang iisa lang, no? And hindi kailangang nasa labas yung assessment. You can embed it. There are ways for doing that. All right? So again, this is characterizing the 21st century assessment. All right, so let's look at an example here. In ongoing assessment, various assessments, each with a different purpose, are implemented at multiple points within a unit of study. So for example, there are some, you see the bars there, no, that cut the horizontal line. This represents the points during the unit where the teacher designs or strategizes assessment. So for example, this unit is divided into 3 parts: before project work begins, Students work on projects and complete the tasks, and then after the project work is completed. So you see there are a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 instances of assessments. And there are different types of assessments here. All right, so I'd like to give you a more detailed example later on when I take up the teacher's role in 21st century assessment. No, I'll give you an example of this and how it looks like. All right, so it's important that we see that assessment should be included as a learning or instructional activity, not just for grading, and it should be at certain points during the unit of study. And it can include different types of assessment methods using various types of instruments as well. Okay, so the third feature of a 21st century assessment is increased student responsibility. In a 21st century classroom, everybody takes part or everybody participates in assessment, not just the teacher. So let's look at these examples on the left. The ones on the left are the current conventional idea of teacher-led and very little student participation, while on the right you should see how this can be transformed or how this looks in a 21st century classroom environment. So let's do this, look at this one by one. All right, so the first one, in the first slide, it says, the first item says focus. The student focus is on grade rather than on improvement. So usually ginigrade natin yung gawa ng mga bata. Whether that's 21st century product like wikis, like brochures, for example, or presentations or movies, to regular reports, for instance, or posters. When we grade students, the focus become the grade rather than how the student can improve. So the idea is, tapos na, no? Hindi na alam kung ano yung rason bakit naging ganun yung grade. So okay na, happy na sa grade. But how can the students improve? Is there information that's provided by the grade to the student so that she or he can tell how else she can improve? Probably wala. So let's look at this assessment practice transformed now through students' more active involvement. Alright, so the assessment is now focused on improvement of work. For instance, through self-assessment. The idea here is that students review their work to determine what they have learned, how they have learned what they learned, and what areas of difficulties or confusion still exist, no? So, yun yung maibibigay ng self-assessment. If we provide students more opportunities to think through their work, to probably repeat or retake a test or improve on a product after assessment, definitely the focus will not be the grade, but on how else he or she can improve the work or deepen the understanding. Right? And this earlier idea about one-way assessment, so teacher to student, only the teacher has the right or the ability to assess. Notice that in 21st century classrooms, there is a lot of opportunities for peer assessment. Sabi nga kanina, no, isa sa mga kino-contribute natin na assessment practices is self and peer assessment. When students perform or provide feedback to their classmates, what they do is they learn a little bit more about what it means, what quality work means. So dati, yung teacher lang ang may alam ng mga criteria na yun. Ngayon, the students have those criteria, like if they are rubrics or if they are checklists, for example, the students know those criteria already. And then, they use those characteristics of quality work. They try to understand them better and internalize them because very soon they will be providing feedback to the work of their classmates. So the idea of peer feedback makes it possible for students to internalize the characteristics of quality work by assessing the work of their peers, and that's very important. Kung ang teacher lang yung mag-a-assess, students will not have that opportunity to think through what quality work means, no? So mas maiintindihan nila, mas i-internalize nila ng ibig sabihin ng quality work. And then the third aspect says grades are sent to parents. Teachers become facilitators in student-led conferences as students take the lead and discuss their work with teachers and parents. Again, if the grades or work is sent only to the parents, the students have no opportunity to show and explain what they have learned. Grade lang, A plus, or 89, or sa atin, A, or B ba yun? Or D. No? So, yun lang ang nabibigay sa mga parents. But when students, for instance, initiate a conference with the teacher or with a classmate, they can showcase their work. They can explain what they have learned. And in these conferences, they take ownership of their learning. In this way, when students talk to their parents, tell them what they have learned, they are able also to improve involvement of their parents in assessment. No, mas naiintindihan ng mga teacher, ng mga parents nila pag sila yung nag-explain rather than just a grade, a letter grade or a numerical grade. And then, okay, so let me pause there. There's a question here from Ricky. Paano gawin ang self-assessment? Kailangan ba may checklist? Well, that's a very good question, no? Self-assessment is something that not all students are used to, no? So, kailangan merong resources tayo na ginagawa in order to support this new role of the student, and a checklist is also important. In fact, you can also use the rubric as a beginner, and then you can check out examples of quality work. Halimbawa, yung column na excellent in the rubric, you can convert that into a checklist so that students can see where they are and where they still want to improve on. They can also, aside from checklist, students can also do some what they call a think aloud, no? So sila mismo, they can practice what is the expectation, and then they look at their work, they assess their own work based on certain criteria. And again, self-assessment can also be done using other methods, like you can do, students can write, no? They can write their own in reflections, for example, because again, self-assessment does not only focus on knowledge or on concepts or content in the discipline, but also self-assessment of certain skills. But again, the checklist is probably the easiest instrument to use for self-assessment. And another thing that's coming out also quite frequently now are students' involvement in choosing work or products that represent the best of their learning. So for instance, when students decide to come up with a portfolio, or if students are required to put together a portfolio, their self-assessment of what should be included and which ones to choose isn't also a good exercise for doing self-assessment. All right. In our next webinars, we will be dealing with examples of formative assessment, as well as assessing understanding, assessing processes, assessing inquiry, assessing thinking, and we will have more examples of students engaging in self-assessment. All right. But again, what is important is it should be very clear what students should be looking for and what should characterize quality work or quality output. Right. So in the fourth item, it says that the teacher provides direct instruction, or the teacher, in Christine's earlier word, is the sole assessor, no? So siya lang ang pwedeng mag-determine kung ano yung quality work. But if you provide students with the opportunity to get through that, like for instance, when you include them in coming up with the criteria for assessment, whether that becomes a part of your checklists or a part of the rubric, which is commonly practiced now. No, students are involved in creating the traits as well as the criteria for quality work or quality performance. No? So again, pwede silang sumali, no? In fact, mas daw nilang i-own at i-internalize, as well as they'll be able to really target highest performance when they are involved in the creation of the criteria with which their work or their performances will be judged. No? Increased student responsibility. All right? Okay, so again, finally, the teachers in a 21st century class really have a task as assessors, no? Hindi lang sila checkers, hindi lang sila graders, hindi lang sila evaluators, assessors sila, no? And again, the idea here is that sorry. that the teachers also are engaged in different tasks of managing ongoing assessment, for example. So the idea is, why do we need, or why do teachers need to plan assessment? And what is an assessment plan, by the way? All right, so what you're seeing right now on your screens, I got this from an online teacher professional development program of Intel Education. And this is, I think, quite original in that particular teacher PD, no? The idea of an assessment plan, which consists of an assessment timeline, as well as the table describing the assessment used, for instance, who uses it, when it is going to be used, and what is the purpose and how it's going to be done. No? So the assessment timeline is very similar to what we had shown earlier in terms of ongoing assessment. Um, in this particular example, this is an example of an assessment plan on a unit about the weather. Okay, so I will be showing you a better picture of this one in the next slide. Okay, there it is. You have a timeline that shows the chronological order with which the different types of assessments occur. No? So before project work begins, students work in projects and complete tasks, and also after the project work has been completed. So for instance, let's look at the item on before project work begins. All right. So you have there a T chart. Sorry. You have there a T chart. You also have a KWL chart, and then also a science journal. And then somewhere, as students work on the project and complete certain tasks, you also have them working on a journal, engaging in conferences with the teacher. And then there's also a rubric that they use to assess the line graph resulting from their observations and the data they've collected. And then there's also a research checklist that students use a multimedia rubric for use in presentations. And there's a visual ranking comment there. That's a visual ranking is an online thinking tool. And then there's also another rubric called the group processes rubric. You can see that. And then there's an oral presentation rubric also at the end after the project work has been completed. Okay, so let's look at the T chart, for instance. The students create a T chart to compare and contrast fact from fiction in a story, and then the teacher uses it as a pre-assessment to determine readiness for studying the weather. No? So, di ba merong mga myths, no? Mga myths about the weather. Kailan lumalakas ang ulan, bakit bumabagyo, at kailan kumukulog at kumikidlat. No? Merong mga gano'n, no? And the students use a T chart for making distinction between what is fact and what is fiction about the weather. I remember, I think that's in grade 7 science, where there's a discussion about the beliefs, the folk beliefs about when and why eclipses occur, no? So, merong ganun silang material dun sa grade 7. And then the KWL, the students develop a class KWL chart about the weather, and then they also create an individual KWL in their own journal. Students return to this throughout the unit to add additional questions, even new learnings, and the teacher reviews for understanding and to monitor progress. Ito yung sinasabi ko kanina, no, na hindi kailangang test o pre-test lagi yung gagamitin to gauge students' starting point or initial conceptions. Pwedeng gumamit ng mga graphic organizers like this KWL charts. And then both the students and the teachers can use this chart to, well, trace their progress. All right. Again, let's look at the idea of the science journals. Again, formatted ito, no? Yung journal, the students make observations and keep notes in their science journal as they investigate weather systems. So, dito, nakadefine kung ano yung mga gagawin nilang specific observations as well as reflections, the prompts of which are developed by the teacher and are also provided during key times of the unit. And students or even the teacher, during conferences with students, they look at this, the contents of the journal, of the science journal, and then also look at the KWL chart that the students continue to complete as the class progresses in the unit. All right, and so on, no? Marami. If you look at the research checklist, for example, this is very relevant to you who are science teachers, no? There's a checklist that guides students through the research process. Ito, nagawa mo na ba to? Do you already have you generated or brainstormed questions, and then have you decided which questions are capable of being investigated and so on? What data have you collected? What evidences support your interpretation of your data and so on, no? So, maraming pwede. Imagine, if we do this variety of assessment strategies throughout the unit, there really is a lot of opportunity for us to know how our students are learning, not just what they are learning, no? And in fact, mas mabilis. Imagine, kumpara mo sa dun lang sa dulo, no? Bibigyan mo lang sila ng test after na may mga nag-lecture ka, tas may konting demonstration, and then the students read what's on the book, and then in the end, you give them a unit test or an examination. Dun mo lang malalaman kung ano yung natutunan nila, but you wouldn't know how they've learned what they learned, no? But if you're very, very purposeful about individualizing your assessment to improve each student's opportunity to succeed, ganito ang magiging itsura ng assessment timeline mo. Meron kang tinatawag na assessment timeline. Magkakaroon ka ng iba't ibang strategies, methods, and instruments for doing the assessment. Okay? Any questions on this? Okay, so let me just quickly summarize what we have taken up today as important features of assessment in a 21st century classroom, or assessment taking into consideration the demands of a 21st century world. The student outcomes are defined not only in terms of content in specific discipline or subject area, but also incorporates skills, attitudes, and values. There is a shift in focus to more formative and ongoing assessments, and in fact, there is a need to create assessment plans or assessment timelines, and there is greater student responsibility and learning and assessment, and teacher assessment can be improved further by providing students with increased active participation in their assessment. And then that while the students also have new roles, such as peer assessment or self-assessment, the teachers also assume new roles in 21st century assessment. Teachers need to manage the entire ongoing assessment process. They need to plan. They need to identify the purpose of their assessment, the methods of assessment, and the instruments that they need to do. They also need to schedule that chronologically within the unit, strategize which ones go first, and then also which ones are important. And then they also develop resources For instance, checklists, rubrics, prompts for reflections, uh, questions to us or probing questions to us during student-teacher conferences or dialogues or conversations. They need to do all those in order to provide students with the support that they need. Again, umiba yung assessment in 21st century kasi umiba din yung expectations sa mga bata. What they are required to master in order to be successful in a changing, technologically oriented 21st century world. The idea is that implementing an assessment strategy that supports students' acquisition of 21st century outcomes is really challenging, and as a process, it requires efforts from educators at all levels. No? Hindi pwedeng teacher lang ang mag-decide na ako gagawa ko ng ongoing assessment at ito yung gagamitin kong methods. No? Sometimes it has to be done within the school or even wider than that in terms of scope. It can be a division level strategy, for instance, for assessment. Or in case of the K-12, it can also be a nationwide plan for assessment or a framework for assessment. The idea is that assessments, both formative and summative, need to be aimed at core subject knowledge as well as learning and thinking skills, as well as 21st century themes or content, as well as ICT literacy, as well as life skills. So dati, kung ang alam lang natin sa math or sa science lang ang ina-assess, hindi lang ganun ngayon, no? How we do things, what our thinking processes are, how do we be engaged when we face problems, how do we make use of our creativity and innovation in order to effect such kind of understanding. These are all also important now. And this will require that there's going to be a large commitment, no, from the national, regional, or division level, and the recognition that the implementation process can really be gradual and will require iterative or multiple cycles of trying out, creating assessment strategies, then implementing them and evaluating them, and then revising them over again until we know how we're best able to support students to maximize their outcomes. It's really, really important that we take some initial effort at achieving 21st century outcomes for our students. No? Kasi ganun ka-ambitious, ganun ka-complex yung ating curriculum framework, no? And the concept of education. There's so much demand, no? Hindi na enough that you know your science. You also need to know how to solve problems that come your way. You also need to know how to operate certain technology tools. And then you also need to relate with others, to communicate with them, to work with them in many ways. Kaya ibang-iba ang itsura ng 21st century assessment. There's a comment here, a feedback here from Carol. She says, it is really challenging. It's not easy to assess the skills, attitudes, and values of each one of the students, no? Without being biased. Well, yes, in itself, it's difficult. And also, it's more difficult if you see some tendency in yourself, no, to include bias in your assessment. All right. So in well, this ends the second webinar on characterizing the assessment for 21st century education. And there are other components, but I've selected only this top four, I should say, top four features. Number one, incorporating skills, attitudes, and values in assessment. Number two, the shift in terms of focus to ongoing assessment and formative assessment. So to balance, no, both standardized and classroom-based summative assessments with one that is focused not on accountability but on learning and instruction. And then the third aspect is that is increasing students' responsibility and involvement, not just in learning but also in assessment. And finally, that the teachers, because of these new perspectives and principles of assessment for 21st century education, also need to take on new roles. And this demands that they strategize, they carefully plan assessment. If there's such a thing as a lesson plan or a unit plan, there's supposed to be also an assessment plan that should go with it. And that's the only way you can you can be fair to your students and provide them all the opportunities to help them improve, and that in the end, to help them set their goals and also meet those goals in the process through assessment. And again, we go back to the title of our first webinar, which is ensuring student success through assessment. And I think this second webinar also shows that or demonstrates that in another way, that indeed student outcomes can be improved, can be maximized or optimized if assessment that's ongoing, that whose focus is on improving student learning and outcomes rather than on labeling them or on grading them is used. So in the end, I would characterize 21st century assessment as one that's focused on information, collecting information rather than grading. No? Yun nga, no? It is only possible to for us to maximize our assessment opportunities for students if we view assessment as a way of collecting information or information gathering rather than grading or evaluating. All right, so are there other questions that we've not replied to? Okay. I am now browsing through the different comments in the chat here, just in case I miss anything. All right. Okay, so I'm going to wait until you've typed your question. Okay, there's a question here from Christine. Implemented na po ba ito nationwide sa DepEd? Well, I should say that if you look at the K-pop assessment framework, more or less the idea is also similar to this, no? Except that in addition to the assessment framework, they also have a grading system. Sorry. Sorry. Uh, I think DepEd actually also promotes the use of formative and ongoing assessment. Di ba meron silang yung sinasabi nila na ungraded assessments, no? They also have those in their framework. And then they also uh, advocate for increased student involvement. Siguro kailangan lang mas mas klaro pa kung paano talaga gagawin. What I'm sharing with you actually are not DepEd pronouncements or not DepEd strategies. These are what we know are examples of assessment strategies and works, research and literature, as well as practice, coming out from practice, that we would like to share with you in these first three webinars. The next webinar will be, the fourth webinar will be focused on understanding the K-pop, DepEd's K-12 K-pop assessment framework. So, importante, malinaw sa atin, no? Ano yung basics na ng assessment, ano yung demands ng 21st century assessment that is able to support the kind of curriculum framework that we're using, the reform movement that we're using in our science and math curriculum. And again, we will be able to harmonize with what DepEd says constitute the K-pop framework. So, isa-isahin din po natin, no? I-analyze po natin yung K-pop ng DepEd framework for K-12. And then we compare that with what is evidentiary practices related to assessment. Tapos titignan natin, bakit nahihirapan yung mga teachers? Baka merong pagkakaiba, no? Yung dimensions ng knowledge, processes, understanding, and also products and performances, no? Bakit hindi pwedeng pagsamasamahin yung mga yan at bibigyan ng percentages or ng weights, no? Baka merong mga duplication o merong magkaiba yung dimension. O baka ganun, isa sa mga mahirap na part ng framework. Okay. So maybe you can try, no? Carol, formative assessment you're already doing, so you might want to try start from the simplest strategy for increasing student participation, no? Are you using, if you're using for instance, if you're using any rubric when you rate or you grade or you score student performances or their products, what you can do is you can quickly, if you're frequently using that, what you can do is you can start by having students contribute their ideas to coming up with the rubric. That's, I think, one thing that you can do, no? So, instead na ikaw lahat gagawa ng rubrics, ikaw yung magka-characterize, no? Ikaw yung magko-compose ng mga traits para sa bawat criteria or bawat descriptor at saka bawat level of performance, get students' ideas. Kumbaga, you construct with them the rubric. Yan. And then, since when you construct the rubrics with them, you develop a common understanding of what the words mean, then the next step would be that you also allow them to use the rubric to assess their own work. So you're doing self-assessment using the rubric. Or, now, pagka medyo sanay na sila na gamitin yung rubric at nakikita mo naman na parang tama naman yung intindi nila dun sa self-assessment na ginawa nila, ginamitan nila ng rubric yung sarili nilang gawa, the rubric that they have co-created or co-constructed with you, then maybe the next step would be that they use the rubric or you use a checklist version, a more simplified version of the traits that they should look for in the performance or in the product of their classmates. Then you can go towards that. Next step would be peer assessment using checklists or that have been created from traits derived from the rubric. So I've already given you three ways you can start with increasing student participation in assessment. First one is, since you're using rubrics frequently, you create the rubric with them. Let them define some traits, contribute some traits so that they will also understand what that means. And then, you can use the rubric as a scaffold, no? In fact, so pag naintindihan nila ang ibig sabihin ng excellent, ay yun ang ita-target nila, I'm sure. And then you get them to use the rubric to self-assess their own work or their own learning. And then the next step would be that they use the rubric or some derivatives like a checklist for assessing their classmates. That way you're exposing them to peer assessment strategies. Yeah. All right, are there other questions? May I, at this point, you can still continue to type your questions, but let me just show to you the link to our evaluation form. We would like to hear your feedback about today's webinar. And I will just post to you the slide that contains the link, and then that also shows you the schedule and the focus or the topics of next webinars. And just a reminder, in case you haven't filled out the attendance sheet, please just click on the link here at the bottom of your screen. There's an attendance sheet for webinar number 2 that you can click. Alright, so the blue link that you see here, the SurveyMonkey link, this is the link to our feedback form, so kindly accomplish that. Let me see how many are with us right now. Okay, so we still have Carol and Ma'am Carol and Sir Ricky. Okay, so pag natapos niyo po fill up yung feedback form, kindly indicate in the chat pad that you have done it already. Alright, so let me also just copy that. Alright, and this is our webinar schedule and focus for the series. Our next webinar will be on February 27, and hopefully by that time we will be doing the topic on the K-pop assessment framework. And depending on some suggestions from our participants, we might also include prior to this prior to taking up the K-pop assessment framework for K to 12, we might also be doing a webinar on how to assess thinking skills, processes, and inquiry skills and related things, no, prior to doing the K-pop. Because we would have wanted to do that in the second webinar, which was originally focused on science only, but now since we've expanded it to more generic content, we need to zoom in again on science. Okay, thank you, Carol. Alright, so we will be providing you with prior invitation and information about the next webinar, what the topic will finally be, if it's not going to be on K-pop assessment framework for K to 12. And then we will also finalize with you the time and the date. Meanwhile, it is still this schedule, fourth Friday of the month. And we would like to ask later on if 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock is a good schedule, or would you like that we revert to our old schedule of 4 o'clock to 5:30? I will be providing the copy, the handout version of this PowerPoint presentation in Kasama Teachers. There's going to be a place there also. And then the recording of this webinar so that you can review what we've talked about. And then others who have missed to join us can still have access to the material and our discussions. Again, I'd like to thank everyone, Christine, Carol, Ricky, and Ma'am Jean earlier for joining us here. And I also would like to thank my co-hosts, Mona, John, and Michael for the presence in today's webinar. Again, thank you everyone, and have a good afternoon.